Great, thank you.
Great. We'll get underway with the presentation, which is actually very short because the intent is to get feedback from the public participants here, and then there is still a comment period that we have open. So this slide is intended, or this presentation is intended to give background on the certification review process and what we're seeking public comment on. And so that's all this is. It'll be a very quick presentation, and then any commenters or the public that are here can provide comment or elect to do so before the end of the close of the comment period. So we are part of the federal review team here for the Baltimore certification review, and I'll go to the next slide. I'm Dan Koenig. I'm with FTA and Region 3, and I'll let Dan and Jasmine introduce themselves as well.
Hi, Dan Somerville, FTA Region 3.
Jasmine Champion, FHWA Maryland, and I'm the planning program manager.
We're three of the members of the federal review team that are conducting the certification review. And our next slide will describe a little bit about the certification review. So why are we here? Every 4 years, FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, and the Federal Highway Administration are required to jointly review the Metropolitan transportation planning process for transportation management areas that have populations over 200,000 people. And that's the Baltimore region. So 4 years ago, we did this, and we're doing it again now. And what it will culminate in is a certification of the Metropolitan Planning Organization. We'll do a written report. We're required to coordinate with the public to seek input. BRTB does do a lot of engagement. We learned a lot today during our site visit about some of the engagement opportunities. And so this is specific to the certification review process. And again, after my presentation, I think we have a couple people signed up to provide comment, and we are accepting comment until what day?
May 7th.
May 7th, okay. So we appreciate the public input, and why is it important? It helps us ensure that the MPO is fulfilling its responsibilities with Metropolitan Transportation Planning process, which is codified in federal regulation. And we can spare everybody about where that regulation is, but if anyone wants the site, we can certainly provide it. And some of the things we're looking to understand are those 3 bullets. You know, do you have an adequate opportunity to participate, or do you feel like there's been an adequate opportunity provided to you to participate? How are you involved? Have you been involved? Those are important questions. Metropolitan planning organizations don't really do projects, but they help coordinate with the project stakeholders. So it's an important distinction that, you know, the Baltimore Regional Transportation Board is not building a highway or transit project, but they have a heavy role in some aspects of project prioritization and project selection and advancing those projects in the region. So we want to get targeted feedback as we can, and it's something that's what we're partly here to do today, and part of why we have the comment period. So that 3rd bullet, what are your views of the process? Or maybe you're new to this and don't quite know the process, which is perfectly fine. I think we have a lot of expertise in the room with BRTB staff here to explain their engagement opportunities, and if you haven't been involved, how you can get involved. So I talked a little bit about this. You know, any comments we receive today or via email after this, if something comes up, will be, you know, logged and responded to and put into our report. We take all those comments under, you know, consideration and advisement as we consider the certification review process. We're reviewing BRTB for a number of different areas of the Metropolitan Transportation Planning process, and the public component is one of them. So really, feedback is very important for the certification review process. As I mentioned earlier, again, there's not a lot in these slides, but the whole certification process culminates in a report, and that's jointly signed and certified by the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration. Our agencies have joint regulations that require us to administer the Metropolitan Transportation Planning process jointly. We share those responsibilities, and ultimately, again, we'll certify the report. We will, in the report, have several different areas. We might have a corrective action, which is if there is something that the MPO is perhaps negligent in, we might have recommendations for areas of improvement, and we might have commendations where the MPO is doing a great job, and we think, you know, they get a pat on the back. So those are sort of the 3 different things that the report will contain for different topic areas that we're evaluating. So what is the Metropolitan Transportation Planning process? And as I was trying to explain earlier, it's somewhat, complex to understand how MPOs interact with, the region and what their role is. And so the transportation planning process includes many steps prior to projects ever becoming, built and operated and maintained and used. So generically speaking, it's the process by which decisions are made and projects are planned, selected, and prioritized for implementation within the region. And that's what we're discussing today, and it's part of our site review. This is a very busy slide. These are some of the key work products of the MPO, and on that are a couple places where there are touch points for the public. Unified Planning Work Program we went over today and reviewed with the MPO or BRTB. They explain their different initiatives that they're planning for and doing. We know that there are certain public involvement requirements as part of that. As that work progresses, it relates to the Transportation Improvement Program or plan, excuse me, which is a list of their projects over a horizon year, and it's I'm sorry, I went out of order. The MTP or the Metropolitan Transportation Plan is a horizon long year look at projects, and there's a constrained portion of that, and there's an unconstrained portion of that. Then there's the Transportation Improvement Program, which is a more prioritized selection of those projects. So I don't need to kind of talk over what those different boxes are, but there are, again, within those several different touch points for the public to get involved. And we know from talking to BRTB today that they put a number of resources online and make available. And so part of what we want to hear is, have you been involved in those processes? Have you found the outreach productive and helpful? And are you looking to get involved more if you're new to this process, which is very okay. But to describe all of these three things, or each one of those three columns would take us probably about a half day. So I'm kind of just really quickly moving past them because those work products are really critical to what the MPO does. What's most important right now is kind of understanding how you may have been involved, wish to be involved, or are involved. That was the end of the presentation, and it's really because we want to focus on any sort of feedback that we have. I put my contact up there and Jasmine's as well, if you wish to provide comment. Again, we also have the opportunity for people to provide comment after the fact, and I think that's on your website, if I'm not mistaken, Regina, right? So we've provided ours if comments are sent directly to us. And then if they are received after, we will also get them. So that's the extent of the deck. I wanted to then, I'm not sure, Todd, how to cue the people.
I think I can go through the list of people who
Okay.
are online and have requested to speak.
Okay.
And, hopefully they'll just address you. And
Well, I'll sit back down and we can take notes based on who we have.
Good evening, my name's Todd Lang. I'm Director of Transportation Planning here at the Baltimore Metropolitan Council. We did have several members who signed up to speak this evening, but I only see two of them currently here. So we'll go through in order of how people have signed up to speak in terms of when they signed up. So the first person who is requested to speak is a member who's very active in our MPO process. It's Michael Sapaniak. He was with Strong Towns Baltimore, but I'll leave it up to him. I believe there might even be some name changes of the organization, maybe even give us a preview of that. But Michael, if you're free and ready to comment, could you please unmute and just address the Federal Review team, please?
Yeah, of course. You hear me?
Yeah, a little bit quiet, but if you could speak up, please.
Sure. I'll get closer. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so we've changed our name. We are now BaltPop, so that's Baltimoreans for People-Oriented Places. And yeah, thanks for noticing, Todd. So we've prepared a written statement that we're working on, but I just wanted to give you a short verbal. So in terms of what do I have, like 2 minutes?
Yeah, we have a little bit of leeway here tonight.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we do
So in terms,
public in the audience who'd like to speak also. So.
okay, cool. Yeah, I'll just do 2 minutes. So in terms of procedure, We think that the BRTB is doing an impressive job. The staff is professional, well-organized, respectful, courteous. And the adoption of the full-featured public input platform. Sorry. Of the public input platform, that's very welcome. So now, however, in terms of meaningful results, we think that the BRTB is actually doing a poor job. This is due to a continuing failure to meaningfully incorporate public feedback into the finalized versions of the draft plans on which the public is commenting. So I stress the words meaningfully incorporate here, because that's really the missing ingredient. So frankly, by all indications, the process used by the BRTB doesn't seem to be built for meaningfully incorporating public input into whatever plan is currently up for comment. At best, it's built to allow some influence over the next plan. Now, we imagine that the BRTB's response to this criticism is that changing a transportation system of the size of the one we have takes time, and we understand that. So, however, what we are all commenting on are plans, frequently for a future that is 25 years out. And we all understand that the actual building takes a long time, but the plans for all of that building takes a whole lot less. And advocates have been pushing for nearly a decade now, beyond ball pop. The long-term plan should have changed by now, and it hasn't. The short-term plans should have changed by now, and they haven't. And because not even the plans, the documents are changing, the members of the public taking the time to engage with the BRTB and make comments on their plans are left frustrated. So any recertification of the BRT, we feel, should be contingent upon the BRTB making demonstrable improvements and actually incorporating public comments into its finalized plans. And me personally, we don't take pleasure in so sharply criticizing an organization that we believe to be staffed by really so many hardworking and well-meaning individuals. But we just aren't seeing the BRTB produce the end results that the public has been pushing for over the course, for over many rounds of plans now. And that's my comment.
Thank you very much. We have a gentleman in the audience. I hope I'm not going to mispronounce your name, Mr. Privis. Privis, okay. Would you like to come and address the federal review team? You can stay there, or you can come up to the table, whichever one's better.
I don't know, I mean, can you hear? Will that be recorded?
Yes, microphones are up in the ceiling, so everything is
You
good.
guys are way ahead of the game, okay, so. Yeah, I have to agree with the gentleman from, they changed their name from Strong Towns, I'll have to look that up. This is gonna, I mean, I write this stuff, okay, I know you're nice people and but it probably comes off rather intense. So I don't know how much of this I want to read. I have submitted this in writing, and I'll probably have a little bit more to submit in writing because I just thought of some other stuff too. So I'll just read some of this. Educating the public. So I'm talking about two things: education and equity. Okay, educating the public. By any measure, the BMC has fallen far short of making its role understood by the general public. We're all taught in school about how the government works and how a bill becomes a law, but only a very, very select few are initiated into the process of how transportation planning decisions are put into place years and even decades ahead of time. Few people in the Baltimore metropolitan area know that there is a planning document, Resilience 2050, that sets out a list of transportation priorities to 2050. In other words, for most of the adult lifetime of the millennial generation. Of those that are aware of this process, very few of the millennial generation, and of those who are aware of the process, very few of them are in the millennial generation that will be most affected by it. Those aware of and participating in the process tend to be older and reflect experience far different from those of the generations that follow us. In addition, the present process entirely includes consideration of those too young to drive. I walked to school on my own from second grade bicycling from age 11 and taking transit to school and extracurricular activities on my own by age 13. Roughly 12% of the population falls into the range 8 to 16. And their desires and preferences are not sought out in the transportation planning process. Many kids would not want to be driven everywhere if they were given safe and reliable alternatives for bicycling, micro-mobility, and transit. It is all the more important to give greater emphasis to this outreach because these are the people who will, as adults, have to live with the consequences long after we are no longer using transportation. I go into a whole paragraph here about getting input from their various YouTubers out there that have come into play, reporting on transportation and urbanist issues. And I specifically cite Reese Martin, RM Transit, Ray Delhanty, City Nerd, and Jasmine and Patrick of Oh the Urbanity. All of these are YouTubers that are coming up with some very interesting observations and expectations that I think reflect the upcoming millennial generation better than anything that I could present. I also say Baltimore metropolitan area is relatively far behind the other major cities of the East Coast, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and DC. And this makes the task of educating the public even more difficult because the people who live here have never experienced excellent transit options. Here again, much more of this experience is now readily available via internet resources. So that's what I have to say about education. On the topic of equity, I'm going to break that down into a few different subtopics. BTRB in Washington, inadequate consideration of employment sprawl, balkanization of transit by counties, inequity in technical support and expertise. So let me go into those briefly. And if you want me to shorten any of this, I can.
I mean, if we have it in writing, feel free to say as much, but if you
I'll
could summarize.
I'll
maybe with
truncate things here. Okay. So the BRTB Washington disconnect, fundamental lack of equity in the BRTB process is imposed by the FHA, treating Baltimore and Washington as separate planning entities. FHA process does not reflect what the Census Bureau and OMB have acknowledged for decades that Baltimore and Washington metropolitan populations overlap and are linked. So some of the fastest growing parts of the metropolitan area, Howard and Anne Arundel counties, fall between the two major centers and are not being well served by being at the edge of both regions, recognized by the FHA. And far from being peripheral, these are central to the growth of viable transit alternatives to the private automobile in the middle of the 21st century. Some examples are the lack of high-speed transit options to BWI Airport, both from B and from W. Even in the Resilience 2050 plan, it's symptomatic of fundamental disconnect in regional planning. Under planning of links for Annapolis. The Resilience 2050 plan still considers express bus as an adequate alternative to regional transit for both Baltimore and the DC suburbs to the state capital. At the same time, the Resilience 2050 plan has a laundry list of highly specific road widening, intersection, and interchange improvements for Anne Arundel County. And the imbalance here is painful. There's no connection, no plans, and not even a study for high-speed transit link between Columbia and the high-tech government employment opportunities of Gaithersburg and the Maryland 355 corridor. This is despite years of lobbying and huge expense in developing a highway link, the inter-county connector. Inadequate consideration of employment sprawl. Within the BRTB region, there is a serious problem of equity in the different ways that it's being presented. While historically Baltimore is very dependent on central business district, in the past 50 years, many employment opportunities have been on the periphery, far from the historic center. Columbia, Hunt Valley, Owings Mills, White Marsh, BWI region, Fort Meade, Trade Point Atlantic, even Edgewood. While all of these developments were made with great attention to automobile access, high-speed transit planning was at best inadequate and very often completely absent. In this light, transit corridors listed in the Resilience 2050 plan are far too short and do not reach any of the areas of concentrated employment that have emerged since the 1970s. To me, the most glaring failure of the Resilience 2050 planning process has been the lack of transit planning for Trade Point Atlantic, which has long been promoted as a major generator of jobs for Baltimore County. Unlike some of the other employment centers mentioned above, many of the logistics jobs generated by Trade Point Atlantic pay only modest wages, so the lack of planning for high-speed transit access to the population centers of Baltimore City is rather shameful. It should not take years of study to figure out that a light rail ring from Randallstown to Trade Point Atlantic will be excruciatingly slow for commuting. And that is not, but even not even that is in the Resilience 2050 plan. I will add in as an aside that the failure of the Key Bridge and its ongoing impact on car traffic through the two harbor tunnels just highlights how much the lack of a high-speed transit link to Trade Point Atlantic has limited the resilience of the area's economy. So as you can tell, that's one I really feel strongly about. Balkanization of transit by county. I think this is a Maryland state problem where the state has a policy of promoting county-based solutions to transit, which absolutely makes no sense in the 21st century. Inequity in technical support and expertise. I don't think I'll go into that much. I think the big point here to make is that SHA, the Maryland State Highway Administration, is a extremely strong player in developing very specific plans for highways. MDOT, MTA is nowhere near the same level of expertise and precision in their planning process for transit. And I think that makes for an imbalanced plan where, again, as I mentioned earlier, we see 40, what is it? I had something about the number of projects. 47 highway projects in Anne Arundel County and throughout the area, most of them street widening. 2 transit projects, a north-south corridor and an east-west corridor, both of which are still less than perfectly defined as to what the final end product is. That's all I have to say. So
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. We do have some members the public who indicated they would like to speak. If it's okay, I'll kind of read out their names, just they might be misidentified here. So Robert Reuter or Bob Reuter, are you online? Okay. Tyler Crow. Tyler Crow indicated that they would like to address the federal team. Tyler, are you online?
Tyler emailed that he was no longer able to participate tonight, and hopefully he'll be sending comments.
Great. Okay, thank you, Monica. Again, we have several of the members who indicated that they would be attending virtually, but we do not currently see them online. It is a beautiful night here in Baltimore, and there's an Orioles game going on right now, so I don't know if they got distracted. But this meeting is recorded and is going to be posted online with the blessings of the federal team.
I think so. I don't see any reason why we couldn't. I mean, we'll be here for another half hour. I think we should those folks show up. And the comment period closes May 7th. So the written statements that were being summarized, we do appreciate the feedback being provided and any other comments. Do we have a snapshot of how many comments have come in during the window already?
Monica, do you have a count for comments online?
Sorry, I was unmuting. We are at 25 comments.
Great.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We will keep the meeting going for a little while, just making sure people are able to log in if they are showing up a little bit late. But meanwhile, thank you for